Every dozen or so months, the king of pop tech on YouTube, LinusTechTips, does a video about the state of Linux gaming. And I've been here pretty much every time to react to it, to give my feedback, to respond to it, and if need be, to correct the record. Sometimes it's a minor correction, sometimes it's not. Well, it's that time of year again, and LinusTechTips has released a new video about Linux gaming. I can't keep waiting for SteamOS Linux Gaming Update 2025. And you know what? I'm here for it. Because whether you like Linus or not, it doesn't matter. He is the definition of an influencer. He's a tastemaker. He's a trendsetter. And he has the ability to make or break a lot of different tech in the PC gaming space. And so because of that, I feel like it's important for me to react to this video, to add things if I feel like they need to be added, to correct things. And I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to have to do any of that. He could be spot on his take here. So let's go ahead and we'll get right into it, shall we? Got my headphones.
There's so many rumors swirling around Valve lately. A new Steam controller in mass production? New branding guidelines suggesting powered by SteamOS consoles? Is that for handhelds like this one from Lenovo? Or is it for the return of Steam Machine game consoles?
Why not both?
Either way, it really looks like Valve is ramping up to make a serious challenge to Microsoft's desktop dominance. And I sure hope they do. Some of you probably remember that Valve's SteamOS started as a response to the threat of Microsoft creating a walled garden with Windows 8.
Oh, I remember. That's one of the reasons I started my channel. Back in the day, it was called The Linux Gamer, and I talked about Linux gaming. And I still talk about it, but I changed the name.
A threat that not only hasn't gone away, but might be even greater than ever with the consolidation of the Xbox and Windows stores. There's only one small problem. As good as SteamOS is, delivering a console-like gaming experience for thousands of PC games, even ones that were only ever intended to run on Windows, Valve still hasn't made a version that's designed for me to put on my custom PC. Or have they?
Well, I mean, there are a whole bunch of great options for doing exactly what you're talking about, not made by Valve. But they do use many of Valve's technologies. Chimera is one of them. Bazzite is one of them. And there's a bunch of other ones as well. And both Chimera and Bazzite offer the ability to install the SteamOS compositor under certain configurations of hardware that basically let you play pretty much any game just like you were playing it on a Steam Deck, but on your own custom hardware. Anyway.
As it turns out, Valve has been working away in the background, preparing SteamOS for its promised official wide release. Yep. So I think now is as good a time as any to see what the experience is like if you download SteamOS and throw it on your PC.
I mean, this is pretty smart of them to get ahead of this, because pretty much next week we're probably going to have, well, I can't say that. I was going to say we're probably going to have an official build of SteamOS, but I don't know if I buy that completely. They're probably going to open it up to hardware manufacturers, OEMs as they call them, and so Lenovo with the Legion Go S is going to have SteamOS built for the Legion Go S. I would be very surprised if they just released an installable end user version next week. But we're very close to that. I mean, they've added a ton of stuff to SteamOS, including support for the Ally X's buttons. They've added NVIDIA support, but it doesn't quite work just yet. They've added the beginnings of NVIDIA support, I should say. So yeah, I think that, I mean, SteamOS, a wide public release of SteamOS is right around the corner. I don't know if it's going to be next week exactly, but it should be before summer, I'm going to guess. That's my hope anyway.
Before you type that comment, yes, I know I don't need to wait for SteamOS to be a Linux gamer. But in spite of what your friendly neighborhood neckbeard may claim, most Linux distros still involve a lot of manual faffing about to get things working.
I don't know about that. I mean, Bazzite and Chimera are... Chimera has a very intimidating looking N-curses like installer, and it just looks very technical. It looks like you're installing Windows XP or something, right? It's got that weird non-GUI, uninviting interface. So I can understand where Chimera would be kind of scary to somebody, but like it doesn't require much setup afterwards. Like after you get it installed, it really just works and it's great. If you have supported hardware. If you don't, then it can be a bit of a chore. But Bazite has a terrific graphical installer that I think anybody, well, I'll qualify anybody with anyone who's like installed Windows before will be able to install Bazite really easily. Yeah, I don't know if I would agree with him on that, but I do think that like if you've never installed Windows before, you're going to have trouble installing Chimera, or especially Chimera, but Bazite would also probably be outside your wheel.
And if Linux gaming is tricky for me, your little cousin Joey Mainstream is going to be screwed. That is why we need SteamOS.
That's basically what I was saying, actually. You know, if you're installing like a desktop operating system, something like Ubuntu, something like Manjaro, or I think he used it was Pop! OS. He installed Pop! OS, and when he installed Steam, it ended up uninstalling his entire like X server or something, which was like the most ridiculous and unfortunate thing that he could have possibly done. I mean, that is absolutely wild, and everybody roasted him for it because like that just doesn't happen that often. But I can understand like if you have that experience with Linux gaming, you would understandably be very wary of doing something like that again. If he's having trouble with it and he's kind of like this YouTube icon of the tech world, then you know, someone who has less experience with PCs is going to have trouble installing Linux. I can agree with that.
That is why we need SteamOS. Projects like Holo ISO, Chimera, Bazite, and the other one that you're furiously typing in the comments right now.
Oh, please stop joking around about Bebian. That's so stupid. It's such a stupid meme. Like Hannah Montana Linux, Bebian, the other meme distros, especially the ones that are that old. Like, God, I find it cringe.
Are glimpses at a beautiful penguin-powered future that could be, but the fact of the matter is that barring some kind of earth-shaking change, when regular people make the great penguin migration, it's going to be on a steam-powered train.
I 100% agree with that. There is a comfort that regular folks can take behind the idea of a big corporation having like support or something. I don't understand it personally, but like it's something that I have noticed. Where and it's not just like regular like folks who aren't like computer enthusiasts. It's like IT department managers and like all these people who feel like there's some kind of security in having Microsoft or Oracle or like these big companies like IBM backing some software. And it trickles down. I mean, it is like something that I find baffling but common. And so having Valve, like literally PC gaming, Valve behind an operating system will bring a lot of people a sense of security, a sense of comfort, I think. And it's like robust. I mean, it's been around forever, right? Like 10 plus years now. For a lot of folks, I think that is going to be like their entry point to Linux is going to be SteamOS. SteamOS 3 particularly. And with people like Linus and folks at Forbes like Jason Evangelo and people in the mainstream media talking about how good of an experience you can have playing games on Linux through SteamOS particularly, that's going to be a big deal. That's going to be the sea change that people have been waiting for to declare the year of the Linux desktop. So, I would agree with that. I'm 2 minutes in. I need to stop talking and just watch the video.
As we're filming this, there are two ways for a non-developer to get SteamOS 3. Option 1, buy a Steam Deck. Easy, but you're stuck with the Steam Deck.
There's nothing wrong with the Steam Deck, by the way. I am a huge proponent of the Steam Deck. Half of my channel is just talking about how cool I think the Steam Deck is. But yeah, I don't know why he's so derisive, but...
Option 2, download the Steam Deck recovery image, flash that to a USB key, and install it on compatible hardware. Valve is committed to making a proper installer before the full release, but that's the way you do it now. Less easy. And
I mean, I'm not sure how much of that process he just like rushed through is going to change when SteamOS has a proper installer. I mean, it's literally, you're still going to download the image, flash it to a drive, and then boot off the drive. So I don't see what the difference is going to be.
And it doesn't help that at the time of filming, Googling install SteamOS actually leads you to the build your own Steam machine page for the old.
That's something I've seen too. People get confused because they want to install SteamOS and then they download the freaking Debian version of SteamOS, which is antiquated at this point, quite old. I do not recommend downloading SteamOS 2. It's not good. It's not good. It was never good. Let's be honest. I did not like SteamOS when it was Debian based. I thought it was a mistake to use Debian.
We used Rufus to image it to a USB drive, booted the live image, picked this option to re-image our Steam Deck. Then we basked in this glorious wall of fast-scrolling text, and that's it. We've installed SteamOS on our hardware for a total cost of $0.
Yeah, they installed it on their Steam Deck, but he's probably going to be using something like this. This is the EM780 from Mini's forum, and this thing is awesome. It's very similar to the Steam Deck. It's probably more similar to something like the Ally or something like that, but it's still very close to the Steam Deck's hardware. It's using an AMD GPU, or APU, I should say. It's got a 780M in it, for like a Radeon 780M, and it's great. It's a terrific little gaming device, but if you're going to do something like this, you're definitely going to need something like this where it's, you know, a sibling or a cousin of the Steam Deck's hardware, more so than something like an Intel graphics chip or an NVIDIA graphics chip, for God's sakes. That's not going to work.
But does it work? Well, the thing is, we won't know until we reboot, because everything that you've seen so far can be done even on unsupported hardware. What do you mean, unsupported, Linus? Linux supports, like, everything, doesn't it? Well, yes, but also no.
No, yeah, I mean, Linux, it depends on what kind of Linux you're talking about. I'm assuming he's going to start talking about various different flavors of Linux or something, but essentially, there are, you can, the nice thing about Linux is that it's open source, and all of the code is available. Like any driver that you might need is going to be in the Linux kernel. But what a lot of Linux developers do is, like, if they're building something specifically for a piece of hardware like this or like this, then you don't need any of the other drivers that for hardware that's not in this device. So you just get rid of it. You don't need it. It takes up space. It contributes to bloat. Not really, but perceived bloat. So if you have a device that you know is never going to have an upgraded GPU, you can get rid of all of NVIDIA's GPU drivers. You can get rid of all the non-device drivers. Like, you can't use printers with this because they didn't anticipate anyone needing to use printers on the Steam Deck or any other like exotic hardware with this, because it doesn't have those drivers. You don't need those drivers. This is a gaming device, and Valve anticipated what you would probably need for drivers and then excluded everything else. It saves space, it saves from perceived bloat, and that's like the Steam Deck image, right? The SteamOS image that we'll eventually get for public release will have to support stuff like Intel or AMD GPUs or printers or anything like that, exotic hardware. It'll probably just ship with a standard Linux kernel, honestly, which includes pretty much every driver that the kernel that Linux supports. So yeah, I'm probably cutting him off here, but whatever.
Linux is an umbrella term that we use to describe many distinct computing experiences, and it's up to the maintainer of the Linux distribution to decide what it does and doesn't do out of the box. And as you'd imagine, the Steam Deck recovery image is developed for, well, the Steam Deck first and foremost, which results in some key hardware requirements. The big two being a discrete AMD GPU and an NVMe boot drive to install to. Also, This is fun. During the setup process, there is not any kind of prompt for which drive or which partition you'd like to install to.
That's not the install process. That is the initial setup process after you have the OS installed. But whatever, that's an editing thing. That's not online.
The TLDR, though, is basically use the hardware that you can find that is most similar to a Steam Deck if you want to try this for yourself right now.
Yeah,
for our
like
test system then, we went with an AMD Ryzen 5 5600G on an Asus Prime B550MA motherboard with 16 gigs of DDR4 memory from G.Skill. That's a big Steam Deck. Now, we did notice some mentions of NVIDIA in recent SteamOS patch notes, so we did try installing with an RTX 3060 GPU, but while we were able to boot the USB drive and we were able to clone the image to the NVMe drive, we were not able to continue with the setup process and instead got this garbled screen. Our mission today does not include troubleshooting drivers or the Linux boot process. I don't care if you think it's easy, Joey doesn't.
Agreed. That's something that a lot of Linux users lack, is the perspective of other people. And so if people want to like respond to this video and be like, but Linus, you're doing it wrong. It's really easy to set up GeForce RTX, whatever. No. Chill out. No.
After a quick scroll and click, we're off to the races in game mode. You've probably all seen the Steam Deck interface at this point. Cosmetically, it's basically desktop big picture, but Valve tries to squeeze out a little bit of extra horsepower by running it on the lighter weight Gamescope microcompositor instead of in the full desktop environment that we'll look at in just a moment.
Gamescope is not just about squeezing out extra performance, which it does do. Gamescope is also about wrangling various types of display modes, telling the game what resolution to render at. It's not just about performance, it's also about providing a console-like experience. If you've ever like tried to play a game on a Windows PC hooked up to your TV, you'll know that like if a Windows pop-up comes up, it can steal focus from the game will minimize, and if you're sitting there with just a controller, well, and you're kind of out of luck. You have to go get up, find a keyboard and mouse, and navigate back into the game, right? And that's just one small instance. There's lots of ways that games can lose focus or have their focus stolen from being like your primary thing, or the game goes into exclusive full screen and changes the resolution of the display, which if you're playing on a TV, that can introduce several seconds of mode switching. The compositor, Gamescope, is actually meant to wrangle all of that in, rein it all in, control it, and make it a much better, more console-like experience. And it's one of like the unsung heroes of what Valve has done. I mean, Chimera OS and Bazzite both use Gamescope in order to get this console-like experience. Now, unfortunately, the modern version of Gamescope does not support anything other than AMD graphics cards. And that's one of the reasons you end up having to use something like this in order to play with SteamOS or a SteamOS-like image. I really like Gamescope. It's a really great technology, and it's really cool that it gets shout-outs like this. But it's also it's something that you don't even need to worry or think about if you're just gaming. It just works, and that's super cool.
I think the most remarkable thing about this gaming experience is that there's absolutely nothing remarkable about it. This is exactly what it's like to play this game on Windows. Complete chaos.
I don't know about that. I think up to a certain point, it is just like playing on Windows. But then all of the stupid, tiny, annoying things that sum up to be the obstructive mess that Windows is for gaming, especially in that 10-foot sofa to console experience, I think that it's much more closely related to a console experience on SteamOS than it is playing it on Windows. When Windows just works, it's fine for gaming, right? But when it doesn't work, it is the most obnoxious like piece of trash that you've ever dealt with in your life. And the thing is, PC gamers are accustomed to that, right? They're used to the annoyances and the fighting with your operating system, and the things not quite working. And so you have to go to PC Gaming Wiki and search for how to fix something. That's just what PC gaming is. And so the fact that he's not having to deal with any of that and it's just working like when it just works on Windows, it makes sense that he feels that way. I can totally get behind that. But it's also cool that he's saying, this is just like any other gaming experience, and it's cool. Because that's something that I've been talking about since I started my channel is, when Linux works, it is the best gaming option for PC. And now it's at a point where in most scenarios, in most games, it just works. And so therefore it is the best gaming experience, barring like multiplayer support and stuff where developers don't want to support Linux for some reason.
It's such a seamless experience. It's kind of mind-blowing to me. Like, I know SteamOS has been out for years now at this point, but the fact that this just works so flawlessly, so effortlessly is mind-blowing to me.
Now, I like that he said that, because it is mind-blowing to me as well, right? That it is so well supported now. Like, so many games are so well supported. And like I said, when I started my channel, I knew that when Linux worked as a gaming platform, it was the best PC gaming experience. But the fact is that in, like, I would say 75% of cases, it didn't just work. Now, SteamOS and the Steam Deck just works in so many more instances. There are still like little random gotchas and issues, and they can be really annoying. And in fact, I have a friend who bought a Steam Deck and he stopped playing it because most of the games he wanted to play were not just working. And so it's not quite a finished, like totally polished experience, but it is getting there to the point where it's almost there in my book.
Man, I gotta set this up in my living room. Like, I have a Windows install that has Steam on it and is configured to launch Steam in big picture mode every time I turn it on, but I never bother with it because it's Windows and it's just like stupid and tedious, and Windows Update and just like, it's not a console-like experience, and that's ultimately what you want in the living room. You don't want to get up and go find your stupid mouse and keyboard, and like, you can use a mouse and keyboard. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but you don't have to. You can just be ready to go.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. Like, one of the things about Gamescope is that it's designed for the controller, and if you need to quit, like force quit a game, there's a button combo for that on your Steam Deck, on your controller, I should say. Hold Steam and hold B for a couple seconds, and then the game will force quit. That is so nice to be able to do that. You can't do that on Windows with a controller at all. You could probably set up some key bindings or some bullcrap, but have you ever sat in front of your TV with a mouse and keyboard and tried to like take in this wide field of view on a 65-inch screen, and you're trying to configure stuff? You're sitting on an exercise ball trying to configure Windows to get the games to work the way you need them to not steal focus from the games when you're playing them, so that you can actually use your controller to play the game. Can you tell that I've had experience with this over the last 20-something years of being a PC gamer? Yeah, it's no fun. Windows is just not a good experience for gaming in pretty much any scenario. Even sitting at a desktop, I hate playing games through Windows because it's so clunky and it's so forced, and I don't know.
And, we can enable HDR. I wonder if it's gonna work though. We can try it in Doom Eternal.
It should
Let's
work.
try it in Doom Eternal. Valve has done some work on getting HDR to work in Linux with the Steam Deck OLED. What I don't know is how well it's going to work on a TV. This TV also, not the brightest HDR TV, so maybe not our best case scenario for testing. In fact, honestly, it looks not great. Hey, the game's running great though, getting 163 FPS. Then again, like I said before, I don't know how much of the problem is just the fact that this TV is not very good.
Now, I've played Doom Eternal with HDR on my TV from my Steam Deck, and it works great. So he's probably he's probably right that it's the TV here that's causing the issue.
Ugh. I don't know how to play this game with a controller, really.
You could always keyboard and mouse it.
Oh, right. It's almost like there is a superior control scheme.
Oh, please. I prefer playing Doom Eternal with my Steam Deck controller. That's just me personally.
And I didn't have any issues with networking or sound, though your mileage may vary there a little bit, like I mentioned before.
I have had trouble with sound in the past, but it was mostly because the audio server detected that I had a 3.5 millimeter jack plugged in, and it tried to pipe audio through that, and manually switching to the audio output on the HDMI port just didn't take for some reason. So I just unplugged the speakers from the 3.5 millimeter jack. But otherwise, I haven't had a whole lot of issues with the audio output. I have a dock here that has a 3.5 millimeter jack in it right there. And that thing does not like being connected to the Steam Deck, or the Steam Deck doesn't like that thing connected to it, because it will always switch to that, and it will, and switching away from it never freaking works, never takes for some reason. So there are some issues with SteamOS and Linux gaming distros that could be worked out, but you know, it's a matter of time, I think.
Between Proton and native Linux versions of games, there's a huge library now. Like, man, compared to the last time we did a gaming on Linux video, there's an enormous library of games that just work now. And while there have been some regressions, notably for online competitive titles where the developers don't want to maintain their anti-cheat on Linux, game compatibility has mostly been growing steadily.
Personally, I think that like studios and actually publishers probably are using the cover of anti-cheat on Linux as a way to just get out of having to support a small sort of niche platform that isn't bringing in as much revenue. Because let's be honest, if you use Linux, then you're probably smart enough to not buy loot boxes, and and also you're smart enough to like add more bug reports and stuff to their ticketing systems, which they don't like either. So that's my opinion. I don't know about I don't know if it's actually true.
I think with the right hardware, I'm pretty much ready to say that building a SteamOS game console for your living room is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
However, I can totally see why Valve has held off on saying the same.
Yep. Valve has a lot more at stake than LinusTechTips does when it comes to saying build a Linux gaming PC for your living room.
Most gamers demand more than just my Steam game works. And there are some essential tools that can't simply be added from inside game mode, like Discord and alternate game stores like GOG and Battle.net. Hey, this is a PC, right? What if I need to get some actual work done? How is desktop mode coming along? I guess now's a great time to continue using the mouse and keyboard that I've got right here. Power and switch to desktop. That was quick. It looks like pretty much any other Linux desktop. Although it isn't quite. SteamOS 3 is what's known as an immutable operating system. If you already know what that means and you have strong feelings about it, SteamOS is probably not meant for you. If you don't know what that means, the oversimplified TLDR is, it means you can't screw it up too badly because it locks down critical system components and it will reset itself when you reboot. That doesn't mean you...
When it reboots? Is that... I don't think that's true. I mean, he said it was it's an oversimplified explanation, but at least on SteamOS, if you unlock the file system and you install something with like the Arch package manager, then it won't reset itself until the next OS update, when it just clobbers whatever you did at the operating system level. With an immutable operating system, you still have writable access to your home partition. When you install an application to the Discover store, that gets installed to your home directory, and that never gets overwritten through OS updates and stuff. And there's lots of things that you can do. Like you can actually add systemd services that live in your home directory, and then you can persist those through OS updates and stuff. It's actually really neat. And it is possible to screw up SteamOS. I've seen a bunch of people do it on Reddit, and then they come and ask for support. But the fact is, it's much harder to screw up SteamOS 3 than it was SteamOS 2. Like the stupid memes about like deleting System 32, the Linux equivalent RMRF star. I mean, that's going to be less possible to do. Although there are still commands that you could do to trick someone into deleting their whole OS with SteamOS, but whatever.
You can't install software. It just means that you're effectively limited to what's available in their Flatpak-based Discover Software Center.
Limited, sure, but this Discover Store is actually pulling its repository from FlatHub, and FlatHub has pretty much any application that you could want. I shouldn't say that. It has a huge selection of popular software. I mean, you can see Spotify is there, Telegram is there for some reason. You can get Signal, you can get Discord, you can get pretty much anything that you would want.
These Flatpaks might not be as efficient as if you installed via a package manager, but what it shows is that Valve learned very well from their community's love of, hey, how do I fix X in Counter-Strike? Press F10. Trolling that has taken place over the years. They've made SteamOS pretty hard to bung up too badly, because think about it. Realistically, poor Joey would almost certainly fall for the old RMRF asterisk trick at least once.
Yeah.
Now, to be clear, there are ways outside of their all applications list here to install software. We even found this script on GitHub that allows us to...
Oh no, don't. Oh no, dude. Oh God, don't ever use this script. Okay, if you're using this script to install non-Steam launchers like GOG or Battle.net, you're doing it wrong. I'm sorry. But this is objectively the wrong way to do this. If you want a free way to install these other launchers, then you want to use something like Heroic. If you're willing to pay a little bit and get a really good integrated experience in your non-Steam games in your in-game modes library, then something like Junk Store is going to work well for you. I've done videos about both of those actually, and I'm not even talking about like the drama that went on with Mora Roy here. This is like the wrong way to install applications. It's limited, and I don't recommend this way at all. Tisk tisk, Linus.
Install dozens of non-Steam stores. But for the Joeys out there, here's a standard disclaimer about running scripts that you find on the internet all willy-nilly. I'd recommend that you stick to the Software Center.
Heroic is in the Software Center. Heroic is great, and you can install many of the alternative launchers. Well, this is the thing. You don't have to install the launchers in order to play the games, right? So if you install Heroic, you can log in to your accounts and install each game separately instead of having like the launcher, you just launch it from Heroic. And the nice thing about that is that it lets you configure Proton and whatever, if you need to, separately from each game, because many games are going to require different versions of Proton. And I understand that sounds complicated, but in a lot of cases, it's handled for you automatically. Just Heroic is a much better experience than something like non-Steam launchers.
Now, of course, it is worth noting that since you're not concerned about conserving battery life and squeezing every last drop of performance out of mobile hardware, you don't actually need to go back to game mode at all. Steam works just fine here on the desktop. And as much as I love touchpads and joysticks, sometimes a keyboard and mouse is just plain a better way to use a computer. With standard peripherals, I can happily use my browser and apps just like I would on Windows, macOS, or any other Linux.
I would agree with that. In some instances, when you're setting up the Steam Deck, it's so much faster and more efficient to connect a mouse and keyboard. And you can definitely use like the Bluetooth. If you have like a Bluetooth mouse or a Bluetooth keyboard, you can connect it that way. It's so simple, and it will save you a bunch of time if you're doing configuration and stuff. And if you prefer to play games that way, that works as well.
We did run into a funny scenario a little while ago. We were trying to get an old printer working with generic drivers, and I had a brainstorm that went, oh man, Linux. I bet Linux will work. Well, I'll just grab a Steam Deck. That already has Linux on it, and yeah. That's when I learned that SteamOS does not include support for printers out of the box, and
dude, I called that out at the beginning of this video, man. That's funny.
You might come across similar gotchas over time. Let's see if they've added it. No, they...
Yeah, I mean, network cards are going to be a big issue, especially Wi-Fi cards. What else? Like, just kind of weird old peripherals. You're definitely not going to have drivers for those in the Steam Deck recovery image. But yeah, there's probably Thunderbolt. You're not going to have a lot of support for stuff that way. I don't know for sure, but yeah.
SteamOS. It's pretty great right now, but it's clear that there's a bit of work to be done. So what about those rumors we were talking about? Could new Steam machines be announced and released at any time? Absolutely. And I think we're due. Valve has spent years getting SteamOS to the point where it's at. They've made some hard decisions along the way, but overall, it works great on the right hardware and it keeps getting better. And the playable game library is huge now with no signs of slowing down. With that said, is SteamOS 3 ready to dethrone Windows? Not yet.
Not yet.
There's enough prickly edges that keep it from being a totally smooth experience. And you can make the argument that Windows has a lot of prickly edges too, but the difference is that so many more people know how to troubleshoot it.
All right, well, that was the whole video. That was better than I think the last one that I watched. I'd give that a B, maybe a B plus. The fact that they recommended non-Steam launchers, I'm gonna knock it down to a B minus. Yeah, that's really not the best way to install software from outside of Steam. Like, if you want to install games from other launchers, the best way to do it for free is to use Heroic Launcher. So yeah, I mean, I would say that was a pretty good video, honestly. The only other like major glaring issue with the video was the fact that he said when you reboot SteamOS, it will revert your file system, which, as far as I know, that's not the way it works. I think it's on every update. But otherwise, I think it's a pretty good video, honestly, and it's a good introduction to Linux gaming. But I would love to know your thoughts. You might have a different feeling about this. Let me know down in the comments. With that being said, if you believe in the work that I'm doing, you can help support this show with a monthly contribution down on Patreon. You can use the links down below for that. You can become a YouTube member as well. If you like this video, you can hit that like button. It's the best way to tell YouTube you want to see more videos just like this. If it's more your speed, you can also subscribe to stay up to date with all the fun stuff we're doing here. And with all that said, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.